Well, welcome back to U.S. Farm Report this weekend. As promised, Don Close and Joe Vaclavik. Joe, let's start with these grain markets. Another volatile week in the market. Saw some intense pressure to start off the week, and then grain prices recovered a little bit on Thursday. What was the driving factor this week, at least?
I don't know that there is one single driving factor when it comes to the day-to-day volatility. We're in high-priced markets. One thing that's interesting is that open interest and trading volumes are down. I don't know if traders are burned out or if there's just a lack of interest in general, but that's a factor that has led to more volatility, I think. Fundamentally, we're still watching the situation in Ukraine, which is very much unresolved. Still just a great number of uncertainties regarding crop production in Ukraine, exports, all of those things. We know that South America has a very light soybean crop relative to what we had thought it would be, 3-4 months ago. So those are all kind of underlying friendly factors here for the moment. Another thing that a lot of people are not talking about as much this year is acreage prospects here in the United States. There's a lot of crops that need acres, and there's a lot of crops that can't afford to lose acres, but somebody's going to lose, and it makes for a supportive situation, I think, overall, until we know a little bit more about it.
Yeah, and we are going to talk about that acreage debate. But Don, leading up to that, you look at the fundamentals of the cattle markets. Has anything fundamentally changed besides the fact that we have seen grain prices climb?
The beef trade itself and North American proteins, we really don't have a direct impact from Ukraine. We've got a little bit of poultry exports from Russia. There's a small amount of beef imports to Russia from Brazil. But in the overall global trade, it's very, very small. Obviously, the huge driver in that is the uncertainty and the volatility with feed grain prices. What will be looking like with cost of gain numbers as we go through the summer.
Yeah, another thing that we're watching, Don, in these cattle markets is the impact that the drought is going to have on further liquidation this year. Are we seeing that to the magnitude that you think we possibly will if this dryness continues in the West?
I think that's probably the absolutely biggest driver in our market right now, Tyne. Year to date, cow slaughter as a percent of federally inspected slaughter is running at 22%. If we go back and look in that 2010 to 2012-13 period, cow slaughter on an annual basis never exceeded 20% of federally inspected slaughter. So what I'd say after the liquidation of cows we've had for the past 3 years, we're setting up a structure incredibly similar to what we saw in 2014. We're just doing it on steroids this time. And I don't see any indications that cow slaughter is going to slow down. It will slow down some seasonally as green grass comes out. But for the year, I still think it's going to be incredibly large.
Well, speaking of the drought situation, Joe at Commodity Classic last week talked to a producer in South Texas who said he actually quit planting because the moisture just wasn't there. How big of a factor do you think drought will be on these final acreage numbers this year? Because it is weighing heavily on those producers in the West.
It's a situation that I think is fluid and changing. There's a lot of rain that's coming for the Southern Plains, the Western Corn Belt, and the Central Corn Belt here just over the next few days, and probably as people watch this. So it's a situation that could change. There's still some time. Immediately my concern would be the winter wheat crop that's in the ground in the Southern Plains in particular, where it's been dry. But yeah, you get closer to corn planting. If it's still dry in the West, that's a problem. And there are some areas, I think, in the central and eastern part of the Corn Belt that could end up being even too wet. You look at places like central Illinois and maybe parts of Indiana that have been excessively wet, and they're going to see a lot more rain here over this next week. So you've got a mixed bag of factors when it comes to weather.
Yeah, but right now, Joe, what is the market trading, do you think, as far as acreage numbers go?
I don't think anybody has a clue. I think the market is trading somewhere in the 90 to 92 million acre range for corn and slightly less than that for soybeans. But there's always some sort of surprise in the acreage report. I think this year is going to be no exception. There's going to be something that surprises us. On paper, corn makes more money than beans, according to the budgets that I've seen. But this fertilizer thing is a huge wild card. Availability, people with contracts on fertilizer, do they actually get physical supply? It's a big question mark, and I don't know exactly how it plays out. I know there's estimates out there, but I feel like we're all going to be surprised in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, fertilizer availability, definitely a wild card this year. Another wild card when it comes to beef demand, gasoline prices. Is it having any impact on consumers' willingness to buy meat right now? We will talk about that coming up on U.S. Farm Report.